Okay, so I'll start with a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, in the suburbs. I did study product design, worked for a few years as a furniture designer, and then went back to school for a master's degree in architecture down the street at MIT. So for the last 10 years, I've been working in China. I started off working for a Chinese architect named Young Ho Chang. I was there for a few years. And then after that, after a few years, decided to start an office with my biggest fan. Started a People's Architecture office with two people. We're three partners. You can see us over there on the upper left. Our work has really ranged, has really been a wide range in scales and types, from 8 million square feet of housing to 200 square feet house, I guess, or many houses in that way. But across all these scales and types, we've always been really adamant about having a strong social agenda. And not only that, we are assessed by a third party. They are called a B Corporation or B-Corp. We are certified as a B-Corp. And we want to really make this an official statement that we are a social enterprise. But what I'd like to talk about today is really how the urban environment of China and Beijing has really inspired much of our work, and how we've learned very valuable lessons from this city. And this is really the informal urbanism that we have witnessed around us. So one of these lessons is how people have improvised with kind of the things around them. So if you go to Asia, oftentimes you see these tricycles that are used for all kinds of things. And so our first project, we didn't have any work, we didn't have any money, didn't really know what to do, and we thought, okay, well, these people are converting these vehicles in this way. This is probably something that would speak to people. So we designed this, what we call a tricycle house, and also a tricycle garden. It was this space that could transform from a living room to a bedroom, and there's all this transformable furniture. You can also pull out parts so that it's a bathroom. That's me over there. And as part of an exhibition that we curated and designed, and also invited people to build other tricycle houses. And we've continued to do this. We've taken a lot of these ready-made industrial things and tried to be creative with them, such as these photo reflectors. And like the people around us, to be inventive with things that were not made to be used this way. So we use these reflector panels to build these structures, and started developing this interest in modular, prefabricated structures that are also systematic and in forms that would be flexible and could change. Another example of this kind of urban informality that we find very interesting is the kind of HVAC pipes that are all over buildings in these cities. And really, these are indicating a program that is put into locations that really shouldn't really belong there, or were not originally intended to be there. So we did this renovation in this part of the city called Baitasi, is a historic area. And this is a cultural center, a community center. And we use these pipes to spell out Baitasi. So that is the name of this area in Chinese, in large scale. And it's also furniture. You see down here, this is public furniture. It's part of the words. And also there are these periscopes that allow you to look into the building where we're having activity up here. They're holding workshops and classes up there. And also these tubes allow you to see very important historic landmarks in this area, so that when people first come here, they kind of have an idea of this neighborhood. One project that I particularly like is one that is inspired by these expandable tents or canopies. And what happens is when the authorities are off work, people will expand out into public spaces, and you have these very vibrant areas that are markets and restaurants and so on. So we gave sort of our interpretation of how we would take advantage of this, and we stuck wheels on these expandable canopies and turned this into kind of a parade-like activity that people would all kind of join in together, all cycling from one location in the city to another. And then where you stop, you expand out these canopies. We call them people's canopies, and have all kinds of cultural events and activities. And we've done this in quite a few locations, always in partnership with cities, and they are the ones that create the program. But it's really allowed people, also cities, to also improvise and to test out different programs in locations that would normally be much more difficult to test out these activities. So they've done this to try out libraries and schools and so on. We've done this in Belgium and England, various cities in China and Asia. With all these ideas, really they kind of coalesced into one project that I think is we're best known for, and this is our Courtyard House Plugin. This project, again, draws from this kind of urban informality that we've witnessed. And this area is quite a difficult place to live. It's this here, it's called Dashilar, this area, and it's right next to Tiananmen Square in the Forbidden City. It's very central. But really these are really slum-like conditions that people are living in. And the conditions are so poor that actually in such important central location, you have half of the housing that's just vacant, and people have just left these places, and just they're degrading over time. And what's interesting is that the city has been really interested in trying to regenerate this area, and with this notion of informality, we realize that much of this happens when there's a failure in policy, and people are coming up with creative ways of improving their living standards because there's no other option, and also coming with very inventive ways. So we tried to give our own solution to this problem, and we wanted to show the government that instead of tearing down vast areas, relocating lots of people, putting lots of money into these locations to attract Starbucks and Zara, that instead you can actually leave things as they are and take advantage of what you have at hand. And our approach was to build a new house inside an old house. And we did this through this prefabricated building system that we actually developed ourselves. So here you see these comparisons before and after. This is one of the first plug-in houses we did. Again, a before image. You can see how difficult these conditions are, and after. And in none of these situations did we tear down anything. So in fact, one of the great results of this is that all of the traces of history, the good parts and the bad parts, are there. There's a lot of editing of history in China, and this is kind of a way of preventing that. These are images of the factory. These panels are manufactured in the factory, and then shipped to site. They're shipped flat packed. The great thing is they integrate these locks. We call them cam locks into the structure. It's actually molded in the factory, and these locks allow you to put a house together very quickly. Actually, it's just like an IKEA piece of furniture, and you can see me and my partner here. We're building a house really in a few hours. And the result is a house that is extremely efficient. We can build in much higher quality, and it's about 10 times as efficient as the original buildings. And the cost is a fraction of the cost of renovation, let alone building a new house. In actuality, we are building a new house here. Oops, okay. This project really took off. It was a real test for us to be able to convince the government that this was something worthwhile. And now it's become a much larger pilot for the urban regeneration of this area. And not only that, we started working with locals. So this lady here on the upper image, she, in the winter, she realized, hey, it's really very warm in your plug-in house, and you don't have any heaters on. I want one of these, and she was willing to pay for this. So this for us was a big step for us, because that meant that this really could be a sustainable way of approaching this. This is her house before and after. And she lives with her son in a very small space. It's about 200 square feet. And we've also done plugins that are now Airbnbs, and also providing people in the community with other forms of income. And now we've built about a couple dozen of these. With the direct support of the Beijing mayor and the Beijing government. Once we started realizing that the project had a future, we also brought our office to this location and renovated one of these spaces for our studio. So this is an image of our office. And the funny thing is, we've really turned into kind of it's almost like a shop front, that people will just come in and, there's no sign or anything, but they know we're there, and they come in and they ask us, hey, can you help me with my house? And, I need a new bathroom and whatnot. So we started doing that, taking on these little projects. And Ms. Fan is the first of a new type of plugin, and this is a independent house. She had sort of different needs, and she required something that was not a retrofit. And for this house, it's actually also an informal situation. It's not exactly legal, but she was like, hey, I'm from this, I grew up here, and I really want to move back. My commute is like 2 hours one way. She's pregnant. She wants to, have a family here. She had great memories from living here, and she wanted to move back. And this was the only way that she could afford to do that. What's interesting is that the building here is not governed by building codes and requirements, because this is, again, it's sort of a gray area. What governs this is actually the relationships you have with your neighbors. And so, this lady here, she's like, hey, you can't block my view, and this lady over here is like, hey, you can't block my sunlight and ventilation. And so actually the form of this structure comes from these relationships. And so we just kind of lopped off these parts, and here we have this design. And actually, I think pretty much everything here is developed in that way. But I think there's this kind of authenticity to that as well. I mean, people ask, hey, this doesn't really look like it belongs here. But I mean, if you look around, none of this stuff really belongs there. So I think that kind of notion is really, really off. But I think people here really understand this. One thing that I want to do during my Loeb year is actually to bring some of these ideas to Boston. So one project I like to do is to engage with the housing crisis in Boston. And I've been working with the Housing Innovation Lab to test out and hopefully push and influence new policy. So taking some of these ideas of using design and building to push policy ideas. Here, I feel like there's there's really more support for that. And what we want to do is to promote the use of accessory dwelling units, and this is something that a lot of cities are interested in, really adding, using a kind of market-based model to add to the housing stock, and to rely on sort of private individuals together with the city to do this. And so hopefully we'll have a chance to build a few of these in the near future here in Boston. I'd like to end with our latest project, which I think is really sort of a summary of all of these ideas. And this is called the People's Station. This project incorporates a lot of these prefab ideas that we have, and has allowed us to take a project from concept to built form in 3 months. I think is really incredible, and could not have happened if we didn't develop these approaches, and also incorporates a lot of our plug-in building system. But one thing that's really interesting about this building is that we've also incorporated a lot of our ideas about flexibility and mobility. And so we also have these, we have a people's canopy that's incorporated into this, and so really you have a big part of the space that can expand out and extend into the city, and also invite people into this place. But not only that these appendages can actually detach and be cycled to other locations, also bringing resources from this cultural center out into communities that would not normally think about coming to this location. This also includes, there's a library here, and they can bring out parts of the library to people that are further out, and hold events and so on. And also bring, hopefully, some of these relationships back to this location. The inaugural event for this was also a retrospective of our office, so we were able to bring a lot of our work, full-scale examples into this location, also share kind of a comprehensive view of our work. And really, this is kind of a great place to take a pause and sort of launch the next phase of people's architecture with this project, and also with my Loeb year. Thank you very much.